I've always said the worst job in the world is mine, subway line inspector. You spend your days, and nights, mind you, trudging through filthy tunnels beneath New York City, dodging rats that could outsize your grandmother's tabby cat, and stepping over puddles that definitely aren't water. But still, it's a job, and jobs are like a good pair of shoes, not always comfortable, but necessary. I'd done it for years, and the filth didn't bother me much anymore. The only thing I couldn't stand were the abandoned stations. There's something unnervingly alive about them. The air's thicker, the echo's too sharp, like the walls are holding their breath, waiting for you to do something interesting. Which brings me to the night I found him. The J line was my assignment that week, specifically a section that hadn't been used in ages. Check the Culver Street Terminal, my supervisor barked that morning. Just a formality. Well, I don't mind formality. What I do mind is being sent alone into a station that's been sealed off for 50 years. You never know what you might find in places like that. Raccoons, squatters, or worse, the smell. Still, orders are orders. I grabbed my flashlight, notebook, and lunch, and made my way down. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Subway tunnels are never quiet. There's always the low groan of a distant train, the drip-drip of water, or the scuttle of rats. But this place, dead silent. I stepped onto the platform. Dust thick enough to grow potatoes covered everything. The tiles on the walls had once been white, but were now a sickly brown, and the station's name, Culver Street Terminal, was just barely legible. 5 minutes, I muttered to myself. In and out. I made my way down the platform, checking for structural damage. The tracks looked fine, if a little rusty. So far, so good. But as I swung my flashlight toward the far end of the station, I noticed something peculiar. The rails, gleaming, shiny, as if someone had just polished them. Now, if there's one thing I know about subway tunnels, it's that nothing shines down there. Not rails, not tiles, not even coins people drop onto the tracks. Everything is covered in grime within minutes. That's when I heard it. Don't go. A whisper. Soft and clear, like someone was leaning in close. I froze. My flashlight quivered in my hand. Hello? Silence. I'm not proud to admit it, but my heart started hammering like I was a schoolboy caught stealing sweets. I whipped the flashlight around. Nothing. Just darkness and dust. Get a grip, man, I muttered, and I walked on. But as I did, I noticed something else. Footprints, small ones like a child's, pressed into the dust. They led straight down the tunnel. Now, this was strange for 2 reasons. 1, children don't usually play in abandoned subway stations, and 2, the footprints looked fresh. I should have turned back. Any sensible person would have. But I was too curious, or maybe just too stubborn. So I followed them. The tunnel grew colder the farther I went. My breath fogged up in front of me, and the air smelled strange, metallic, like pennies. The footprints led to a door. It wasn't marked on any of the station blueprints I'd seen, and I've seen plenty. It was old and iron, with strange carvings etched into it, curving lines that twisted and turned like tangled thread. Then came the whisper again. Don't open it. Well, I'm not a man to take orders from disembodied voices, so I pulled out my maintenance key. To my surprise, it slid into the lock perfectly. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The room beyond was small and circular, with walls made of smooth black stone. The air was cold enough to bite, and in the center of the room was a chair. And in the chair sat a man, or at least something that looked like a man. He was tall and thin, with skin so pale it seemed to glow. His head lolled to the side, his eyes closed. His hands, long and spindly, rested on the arms of the chair, and his mouth moved as if he were whispering to someone unseen. I should have run. Every bone in my body screamed at me to turn and flee, but instead I stepped closer. Hello? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The man's eyes snapped open. They weren't human. They were black as coal, with no whites, no pupils, just endless, empty darkness. His mouth stopped moving, and for a moment, everything was still. Then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that curdles milk and turns good men wicked. "Hello," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room, seeping into every corner of my mind. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I didn't mean to—" "Oh, but you did," he interrupted, his smile widening. "You meant to open the door. You always would have. People like you always do." My feet felt glued to the floor. What do you want?" I managed. He tilted his head as if considering the question. "Want?" he echoed. "Oh, I don't want. I am—" The room began to spin, the symbols on the walls writhing like snakes. The man, or whatever he was, leaned forward, his eyes boring into mine. "Now," he whispered, "it's your turn." The world went black. When I woke up, I was sitting in the chair. The room was empty. The door was gone. And somewhere, far off in the tunnel, I heard footsteps. Small ones, like a child's. And then the whisper, "Don't go."